All right, does the multi-millionaire president practice what he preaches amongst his own family? Joining me now, the author of the brand new book, An Obama's Journey, My Odyssey of Self-Discovery Across Three Cultures. President Obama's half-brother, Mark Obama DeSanjo, is with us. How are you? Good. I got to meet you yesterday. Good to see you again.
Great to see you.
We had a good discussion on radio.
We did, and we did. You know, we covered a lot of topics.
We did,
and we even included some music.
Because you're a musician and an artist.
Yes.
You know, I asked the crew because I think you look like your brother a lot.
Well, he looks like me.
All right, you guys share the same father. You sound like him. You laugh like him.
I do. There's a connection.
There is.
We have the same dad, Sean, and you know, we're part of a big family, as you know.
You first got in contact with your brother in 1988. You were born in 1964.
65.
60. I'm sorry.
Right.
I don't want to age you. Why did you not connect before that?
You know, when I was growing up in Kenya, my father, Barack Obama Sr., you know, we had a history of domestic violence for 7 or 8 years. And it was a very powerful and destructive event in my life. Basically, I wanted nothing to do with the Obama name for a long period after that because I couldn't protect my mom. He was brilliant, but he was a tortured man. And it took 15 years before I met Barack the first time in 1988. And when I write about it, it was a very intense meeting.
You talk in the book how you were more willing to accept your father's flaws than Barack. By the way, I never thought I'd have an Obama on the show.
Well,
you know.
Well, I think in the future, you know, if we work it out somehow, maybe we'll get some other.
Can you make that happen? Can you bring Barack with you next time?
Well, you have to treat some of us nice.
Have I not been nice to you? I've been nice to.
You're being very nice to me, and I must admit you're being very gracious.
Yeah.
And also, you're being a person who's truly trying to understand our family, and I appreciate that. And I know you also want your millions of listeners to also understand more, because we want America to move in the same direction in many ways.
I see your brother as a rigid, somewhat radical ideologue.
Okay.
I think he was shaped by the likes of Frank Marshall Davis and Jeremiah Wright and Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dohrn, and I've talked a lot about that.
Yes.
You talk a lot about, in your book and in My Dreams of My Father, his book,
yes,
a lot of talk about race.
Yes.
And how being of mixed race impacted both of you. How did it impact you, and how do you think it impacted him?
Well, you know, the issue of race is something which, particularly for mixed race kids, is very powerful and very strong. You know, in our global economy, things are becoming much more integrated. We've got different races, different cultures getting closer together, marrying, and so forth. You know, the reason I wrote this book was to tell my story, not to have other people tell it for me. Barack did the same thing, and I respect him in the sense that he was trying to use the book for his own purposes and also for his own identity. Now, that said, I know that when I was growing up, a lot of things in terms of my African culture, I'm half black, half white. I did not accept it because I associated it as a child, you know, when you're this high, with my father, and I couldn't protect my mother. And I remember the thuds and the screams and not being able to help her in any way. And that's something which affected me and moved me towards Western culture. I love Beethoven, Bach, Mozart, as you know, Fats Waller. And these are things which, at the time when I first met Barack, I felt that he was not interested in them. On the other hand, he was a person who was brought up in that culture, you know, in America, in white America. And I think when he was coming to Kenya, that balmy summer, 20-odd years ago, he was trying to find out more about his African roots, and the book talks about that and a conflict.
What are we to make of the fact that here you're his brother, here you met, but you really haven't had a lot of contact? How many times have you been with him now?
Well, I won't. I mean, we've been.
Well, you talk about it in the book. I mean, you were with him, and I guess first met in '88, and you met when before the inauguration, and.
Right.
You know, how many times?
We've met a number of times.
How many is the number?
The most significant times have actually been about 3 of them, and those were the first one, and then Beijing, and then also recently, you know, in Austin, Texas. We've also been in contact, you know, since then, since the presidential election and so forth. And the most recent was actually at the last inauguration.
Because I play all of this about spread the wealth and everybody's paying their fair share and Americans couldn't afford to pay more and be our brother's keeper. And there are 5 siblings from your father.
Yes.
Okay. And so you
directly related to my father.
But in all honesty, it's less than a dozen the times you've been around your brother. He's the president of the United States.
Yes.
You have another brother that I would categorize. You took issue with me on the radio. Lives in a hut, has no money. He did an interview in Dinesh D'Souza's movie. To me, shouldn't that brotherly love start at home? In other words, he's a millionaire. He has a brother that doesn't have any money in Kenya. And I remember at the time I said I'd give him $1,000. Give him something, which would be, and yet he doesn't help that brother.
Yes.
Is that hypocritical?
Well, let me share with you. You know, there are lots of things that go on in families which are not public. I mean, you know, a lot of people don't know, for example, that Barack was one who helped a lot of the poorer relatives in Kenya come to Washington, D.C., you know, for the first inauguration. It was a very special time. You know, for a country like Kenya, which is a developing country as opposed to a developed country like the United States, there are huge differences. But status is also important, and being able to be with your family.
Shouldn't he help his brother who doesn't have any money?
My understanding is that Barack has helped in a number of ways, but maybe not so obviously and not so.
It sounds for the Mr. My Brother's keeper. Let me ask you a last question.
Sure.
You talk a lot about the book and your background. I think I've got some insight, I think, about
I hope you
Barack.
liked it. I hope you liked it.
No, it's interesting to me because I feel like I have a pretty keen understanding of your brother.
Thank you.
I'm not, how do I say this delicately? I can't say it delicately. I think your brother does not have the capacity to grow as a president and politician. I find him incapable of abandoning what I believe are radical socialist views. Well, how do you see him?
Well, that's you know, that's the greatness of America, isn't it? We all have different points of view.
But how do you see him? I mean, you're his brother. Are you defensive of him? Do you feel like you need to defend him, or do you feel like it doesn't matter?
I don't think Barack needs me to defend him. He's strong. He's got a great team of people around him.
If somebody says something about my sister, I'm going to jump in. I want to defend them.
But let me also say this. You know, in all fairness, he's a person who has a talent that doesn't need to, it's not about growing. Some people develop certain things. Like some people are born with music. Some people are born to write. Some people are born to be able to speak on the air like you do. But there's some people like Barack who can inspire people. And
he did do that.
He did do that.
I think he brainwashed them, but he inspired
them. He inspired them.
Okay.
And, you know, part of that is that's a rare thing. And especially when you consider that a lot of people in the world, they need hope.
I think he didn't live up to the hype. The speeches were great. The teleprompter was great. The Greek columns were great. But he didn't live up to the hype. Fewer Americans are working. The economy never recovered. He seems paralyzed to deal with ISIS. I don't know. I agree he did captivate a nation, but I don't think he could follow through. Is that a fair criticism or unfair? And we got to go real quick.
My feeling is that it needs to be corrected in terms of that criticism.
Okay, fair enough. I'll leave it there. I did enjoy the book, and I enjoyed meeting you as well.